Wrestling with wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
See, JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Do you see any of the aggro crag? Was any of that left over?
No, unfortunately not.
No?
I'm taking some of that home.
Definitely not is the barn burner that Leaf Cassidy and Tiger Ellis thing was, but we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
It's still real to me, damn it.
He kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Selena Vega on a pole match.
And I mean, Big E's got Whale performing in his entrance, so I feel like
Wale.
they would.
It's Wale.
Wale. I don't listen to. Okay, well, I don't listen to him, so I apologize to Wale.
This is in the mail, my good sir. No, it wasn't.
I feel like Vince is just gonna have them team together and be like, have them called Woo Bro. Like they're just gonna be the Woo Bros. Like, anyway.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely,
And then you can listen to us too.
Strap on and balls only on wrestling past and present.
This is Gangrel, the Vampire Word, and you're listening to Wrestling where wrestling's past and present.
This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Tim Kirk.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And today it is episode 96, and we're going to talk about Bad Blood 1997. Also, stay tuned to the very end of this episode. We're going to give you details on our 100th episode coming your way on October 29th. So that's just a few weeks away. Lots of exciting details coming your way. So make sure you listen to the full episode, and we'll get you those details at the end.
And we may or may not have some special offers for the people that do listen that can follow through at the 100th episode. And again, spoiler, but yeah, make sure you listen to this episode, and then you'll get the full details. And as we lead up to it, we'll show more details, and we'll be able to discuss further what's going on. But very exciting things happening.
I agree. That sounds like a very tasty teaser to me.
I agree.
Not trying to be too cheesy or anything.
No.
Right?
No. So, yeah, Bad Blood 1997, kind of a sneaky important show in history that's not really talked about. This is kind of between SummerSlam 97, which we've covered in the archives, and Survivor Series 97, which we've also covered in the archives. So you can listen to those two episodes to give you perspective. But this is, after the Owen Hart, Steve Austin pile driver botch, and it's right before the Montreal Screwdrive. So it's kind of this kind of leads us into the storylines that led up to the Montreal Screwdrive. So it's kind of an important show that I don't think gets talked about enough in history.
And it's one of those shows too where there's a lot of names on the card, and I think for once it's one of the cards that doesn't it didn't let me down as much as some of the ones do. When you see a lot of the names, you're like, oh, this is going to be a great show, and then you're like, it wasn't that good. This one actually was a sneaky good show, I think. With, like I said, a lot of big names that would go on to be in the Hall of Fame on this card.
No, I agree. We had to have the travesty that was Unforgiven last week. So at least it was refreshing to see, like Roland said, a card that at least came close to living up to potential, and knowing the importance, like Tim said, of being sandwiched between SummerSlam and Survivor Series 1997, and just how historic 1997 was for this company anyway. This pay-per-view was definitely setting the stage for what was to come in the Attitude Era, and for what was to come for the next couple of years of WWF.
And we should point out too, this pay-per-view took place the day that Brian Pillman passed away. They mentioned that numerous times throughout the show. Again, watch the Dark Side of the Ring documentary on Brian Pillman. Gives you more information about his death. So, and they did scramble a little bit with the card here. I mean, he was supposed to take on Dude Love in this pay-per-view. Obviously, that match got scrapped. So there was a couple matches that were filler. I think it's a little surprising that the card was as good as it was, considering that they had to scramble a little bit as well.
Yeah, I don't know how you prepare for an untimely death. You know what I mean? There's no way to prepare for something like that. So for them to scramble and be able to fill the episode, fill the show time-wise. Kudos to them. We always say how they're rewriting stuff at last minute. Vince is, crumpling scripts up and making them rewrite it. At least for this instance, obviously they talk about the death of Pillman on the show, like Tim said, ad nauseum, which granted you should have, because it's an unfortunate incident, but for them to be able to throw it all together and keep the show looking pretty seamless is pretty impressive, considering, like Tim said, they found out pretty much earlier in the day that certain matches weren't happening, that someone had passed away. So
and like Tim said, definitely watch The Dark Side of the Ring parts 1 and 2 on it, because it's very insightful to just how quick it happened and how unexpected it was. Like Roland said, they found him in the hotel that morning, having wrestled the night before, and he was involved in a major storyline. They were doing the Intercontinental Tournament before, the finals were taking place with Owen Hart and Farouk later tonight. But, you had Brian Pillman and Dude Love got into a scrap during their match, so it was setting up that feud. So like Roland said, it's really hard to plan for a major storyline that you had, and then also try to put together a card. And also, some of the guys probably didn't have their hearts in it, because this was their friend. That's what they talk about all the time, that wrestling's a brotherhood. I couldn't imagine, you find out your coworker dies that day and just go on and do your job, especially a job that's as physical and emotional as wrestling. That'd be so difficult.
Yeah. So they definitely did what they could in a bad situation. So let's get into it. We start off with a tag team handicap match. You have the Nation of Domination, which is represented by D'Lo Brown, Kama Mustafa, and Rocky Maivia. You may know him as The Rock. He's kind of a no-name in wrestling now, but
you may know Kama as the Godfather.
Yep.
Papa Shango too.
I'll say Papa Shango.
They're going to take on the Legion of Doom, Animal and Hawk. It was supposed to be the Legion of Doom and Ken Shamrock, but Ken Shamrock was injured. Apparently a spine buster caused internal bleeding. I don't know. You see a spine buster every match now, so I don't quite get that storyline.
I feel like this was at a time where JR kind of chronicles in his book that they wanted to push Shamrock as hard as they could, but he became unreliable. He wanted to go back to UFC, so I feel like that might be some of it too. I don't know for sure if that's what it is, but like it kind of, with knowing what JR said in the book, it kind of makes it seem like this could be a cover job, essentially, that he has internal injuries. Well, maybe they were starting to realize how unreliable he was, and they were trying to maybe punish him by not. Back then, if you didn't work, you didn't get paid. So maybe this is a way to take him off the show and not have him get a pay-per-view check, to try to get him to show up more and be more professional.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was thinking the same thing when they were talking about it. I was like, well, internal injuries, did he get that from training for UFC? Because his heart was always in UFC. Even when Dan Severn came in for a cup of coffee, they had a UFC style match, and he was the world's most dangerous man. Basically, came out in a UFC style, mantra. And so it's almost like, I think wrestling to him was just a platform to keep himself relevant for UFC. And granted, he's gone on to become a Hall of Famer now in TNA and other promotions, but I don't think he really ever had his heart in WWE. And I think, like you said, this was their way of punishing him. Like, okay, well, if you don't want to take this seriously, we'll just take you off the show. And it's kind of a shame, because it made the match kind of a letdown, because it was just very clustery. Like, like the ending with Animal outside the ring, chasing off Farouk. And it's like your partner's getting the shit kicked out of him, and you're just going to stare down Farouk. Like, you're not going to help your partner. You can hear getting kicked in the head by Kamala.
No, not Kamala.
Kamala kicked him in the back of the head before the rock bottom.
Kama, not Kamala.
Sorry.
Kamala.
Kamala's the moon belly. My bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
You got the giant.
All right, sorry. Charles Wright kicked him in the back of the head, and he got a rock bottom. How's that? I'll go real name.
I didn't even know what to call the rock bottom in this match.
Add that to the list of names, like Whale, that Mongo had just butchered.
Abandon.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna go there, huh? Okay.
Hey, I was gonna say, I'm not the only one. I
will knock on wood. I've yet to have any butchering that badly where it's stuck. I just can't use my fucking mute button. So
we all have something.
That's my issue, clearly.
And it's Mongo versus the English language.
So, the finish was a little clustery, like you said, Manga, but I actually thought this match was a good opener. I thought it was, a good way to get the crowd going. I mean, you can't go wrong with starting, match with the LOD. Although I kind of feel like this might have been towards the end where the crowd was kind of starting to like not be as into them as they were, back in the 80s, early 90s, stuff like that. But overall, I was actually entertained. Like the 97 WWE seems to be really entertaining for me, like all the shows that we've covered. And I really like this opener.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's one of those matches, again, on paper, that didn't necessarily let you down, thankfully, but it also could have been a little bit better. It wasn't, great, but it wasn't bad. Them having to kind of scramble. I mean, they obviously they could have put Dude Love in this match. If they could have made it, they could have said, hey, we're gonna have Dude Love team up, take Shamrock's place, since Dude Love doesn't have anything to do now because of the unfortunate. So like they could have gone a different route, but they decided to go the way they went, and it wasn't the worst thing, and it also wasn't the best thing. But as you'll see as we go on, there's way worse things on this card than that match. And I'm not shitting on the card. I'm just saying there's a few things here that, every show always has a couple, and this one does too. And honestly, this one wasn't one of them. This is one of the better matches on the card.
No, I definitely agree with those points too. I think that between the finish and then, like Tim said, the LOD's push at this point was kind of null and inconsistent because this is a little before they left again, because they wouldn't come back until WrestleMania 14. So I don't know if it was just this was the start of Hawk's issues, because I know they go back to New Japan pretty soon. And I just think, unfortunately, that's another, we always say this on the show, it's a what could have been. Like, if the LOD could have consistently stayed in WWF, for a long period of time, who knows how dominant they could have been in WWF, because I feel like they're legends more outside WWF than what they did in WWF. Like, they're more legends in New Japan, more legends around the world versus WWF, because WWF is almost like they would have a really hot push and they'd kind of fizzle away, and they'd have a hot push and they'd fizzle away. And then, after Hawk's passing, they tried as hard as they could to have the LOD 2000 and other iterations. It just didn't work. And it was almost kind of a shame to see this match, but I'm glad in storyline wise that the Nation went over, because I liked them as a heel faction. I remember being in school with Roland, and we used to love, the stupid heel factions like this. Like we'd walk around the hall, be like, "We are the Nation." We'd sing it. I remember you singing it with me, especially the Corporation too. When they turned into the Corporation a few years later, when the Rock, the corporate eyebrow, like that's what. So Tim's right. That's when it was fun, because you hated these factions, but you loved them at the same time, because there was people you liked the wrestlers. You just maybe didn't like the gimmick as much.
Next up is a tag team match. I don't know how to be politically correct about this one.
LPs.
LPs. Okay.
LPs.
So you have Max, Mini, and Nova getting a win over Mosaic and Tarantula. 6 minutes and 43 seconds here. This match was full of botches. It was just one botch after another. The finish was totally botched. Even Jerry Lawler may mention that Tarantula's shoulder was up. So yeah, the amount of botches in this match really took away from it. These guys are talented. I'm not taking away from their ability, but it was not their night in this match.
It's the old let me up match. It's the filler, the piss break, the concession stand break. This is typical a match leading up to a match people want to see, and then a match coming out of people that people wanted to see, and that's what this match was. It was just a filler. It was like a 7 minutes of just, it was just there. And obviously, for those of you that don't know, LP Little People, that's, it was back in the day, back in, the 70s, 80s, you always had those old style cards that had like, this person and this person with women and midgets. Like that was like their term, and they would put that on the poster. So I think Vince still lived in that time, because like for the longest time in like the early to mid 90s, they still tried, like they had Doink and he had all his little Pink and Dink and Wink, and they cheesy, sleazy, the King had his own, King's Court of Little People. And it seemed like they always kept doing this every now and again, almost because Vince is like, ha, that's good shit. And it's like, no, it honestly, like Tim said, this match was not good. It was full of just crap. It was bad. And it's not that these guys aren't talented or weren't talented or didn't do things well. It's just, I mean, well, Hornswoggle, same kind of thing. Vince kept him around just because he liked to laugh at him. So at one point he was his dad. So like, it's just Vince has some infatuation with living the Carney style of booking, even to this day, that it makes you wonder why and whatnot. But yeah, it was just a filler style match with four little people that they were wrestlers. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, like Tim said, it just botch after botch, and it was a hard to watch 6 minutes and whatever seconds. I can't even remember, 6:40 something, whatever it was. It was not easy to watch, put it that way.
And I'm not going to go over the match because you guys went over it perfectly. It was a botch fest, and these are four talented wrestlers who trained in Mexico, and they are called mini stars over there. That's not a name I'm making up. It's what they literally translate to. They're little persons. I've personally just never been a fan of how WWE uses them, or WWE, because they always just make a mockery of them. That's just not right. Like when they would have many versions of wrestlers come out to be insulting. I think even recently is when Daniel Bryan and Big Cass had a feud. I think they brought out a little person. It's like, it's not funny. Like it's you're just exploiting someone, and you really think that that's what fans want to see. We don't. Like Roland said, back in the 80s and 70s, it was on the poster. Maybe it was an attraction. Like when you go to your local fair and they always had the world's smallest person, at the fair, people pay for it. But it's wrestling, and there's dangers, there's risks involved. We don't need to have you showcase someone just because you're exploiting them. I mean, even their names were essentially a play on, their stature. And then you have the King, who I love the King, but man, those jokes would not fly today. Some of those jokes he was making the whole entire match was like, oof. There was a couple moments I'm just like, did they? Yep, they said that. And God, Vince still sucks on commentary. I don't know why people said he was a good commentator. He is one of the worst commentators I've ever heard.
Next up is a tag team match for the WWF Tag Team Championship. You have the Godwins going defeating the Headbangers in a little over 12 minutes here. This match was their match for me. I wasn't really. This is the one I found myself going on my phone, not really paying a whole lot of attention to. You have some shenanigans with Uncle Cletus. That's a terrible name for like a talk show. And like a really awkward looking power bomb at the end to win the match by the Godwins. And after the match, they beat up the Headbangers, and they made the announcement if they don't leave the ring immediately, then they'll be stripped of the titles, and then they just left the ring. So like kind of anticlimactic there. So yeah, this one was kind of we talked about a let me up match earlier. This for me was kind of let me up match on the card.
So Tim, I'm going to ask you, do you know the other character that Uncle Cletus played?
T.L. Harper.
Ah, thank you. Good. Now, mind you, this is back when they had a plumber and a garbage man.
The Repo Man?
Yeah. the former demolition member turned car thief, repo specialist. Anyways,
but even the Godwins, they were basically hillbilly Jims, like they were inbred Hicks.
they were hog farmers essentially. But this is again a play on like characters from like the 70s and 80s that people were like, oh, this is cool. 97, no one really gave a shit like that. That's that. I mean, I think the Headbangers were over to a point. But I don't think the Godwins had really any steam ever. I feel like, they did, Mark Canterbury and Dennis Knight did so much more afterwards in limited roles than they did when they were featured as the Godwins, if that makes any sense. And, it's just another, like I said, there's a couple of matches on this card. Unfortunately, they were kind of stacked together. It's after this, the card's actually pretty good, in my opinion. But yeah, the two matches from the little people to this match, it was almost like an extended intermission break for anybody that was there, because, like I said, there was a little bit of interest in the Headbangers, but like I said, they were over to a point. and it's just it's one of those things where for whatever reason they were still trying to move away from the occupational wrestlers.
And that's what Vince wants to go back to. And that's why WWE kicked his ass for 83 weeks. That's why WWE became relevant. Sound familiar? People got sick of the same product and went to the alternative. And that's like you said, they had these weird hokey gimmicks. Like, don't forget, remember Goon? Don't forget, Bastion Booger, like all these terrible, which is, sorry, Sam, I know your favorite wrestler besides the Headbangers.
Yes.
Which if you listen to our Insurrection pay-per-view, Tim tells you his love of the Headbangers in that match with the Madonna boobs.
Well, and like I said, not to cut you off, they were definitely over to a point, but I feel like for whatever reason they took it too far. Like they tried to like push the envelope, and people were like, "You're cool and everything, but like this is stupid." And like
honestly, I think I was more upset that LOD was in a meaningless handicap match than fighting for the titles, because I feel like if you had LOD in this match, I think this match gets elevated, and then you could have had the Nation. Anyway, Nation had so many enemies back then. You could have had them dominate anyone, no pun intended. And you could have, and then you tell me Dude Love can be on the card, but you want to put that Max Mini and Nova on the card. Like, so I know they scrambled and we said they did a good job, but though, like you said, they kind of clustered two matches in there that you're just like, meh. And then obviously the Goblins going over. I'm like, oh, cool. A team that there was no crowd reaction for whatsoever when they got the titles. And then you have to see the Headbangers awkwardly in their underwear getting stomped after, which was not a sight anyone should have to see.
Next up, I'll mention this pretty cool segment. They honored the Legends of St. Louis, this event taking place in St. Louis. So I was a little surprised that they honor these, because these were all like NWA champions. So it was a little surprising, but they honored Gene Knitsky, Dory and Terry Funk, Luthez, Sam Muchnick, Harley Race, and Jack Briscoe. I think that was all of them.
And Jerry.
Oh, Jerry was there too? Okay. So a little cool segment. They kind of almost like a mini Hall of Fame kind of type ceremony. So I thought that was kind of neat. If you're into nostalgia and stuff like that, it's definitely a cool segment to watch.
I wonder if that would have been on the card had Brian Pillman not passed away. I wonder if that was a filler spot too. It was cool that they did it, but I wonder if that was.
I would think so. Why would they all be there?
Well, if they're in the area.
Yeah.
Back then, it was nothing for people to be backstage hanging around if they didn't work there. Like you JR's book and stuff, you hear about people just hanging out backstage that didn't even work there. They would just show up. So, but yeah, I mean, you wonder if once they found out, if maybe they made some calls too. Maybe they were like, "Hey, can you guys make an appearance tonight? Like we need filler too." So who knows? I would like to think they were going to recognize them without Pillman dying. But like maybe that was something they said, hey, we need to fill some time. And, they decided, well, we have people that were going to be hanging around, or people that, were coming to the show anyways that were going to be backstage. Maybe we can put them out on camera for a little bit.
And I think what's cool is my one complaint about, current WWE pretty much post 2001 is they don't acknowledge wrestlers' lineage. They don't acknowledge any other companies they work for. I like that, like Tim said, they were acknowledging the NWA, which is essentially the granddaddy of wrestling. Like they were acknowledging lineage, and even early match, Vince himself, when talking about the match, would talk about LOD and all the titles they've won. He was, talking up, not to jump too far ahead. He was talking up Farouk a little bit. So they acknowledged their career. So I don't understand why Vince suddenly was like, if it didn't exist in WWE, it doesn't exist, damn it. Because that doesn't make sense, not to go on off topic or anything, but like we talked about last week with Breaker, Rick Steiner's kid. You can't acknowledge his lineage. Like you've shown you can do it in the past. That's what the slap in the face is. So this segment was awesome because it's like, oh yeah, Vince used to give a shit.
So next up is the singles match. It's the finals of the Intercontinental Championship Tournament. It's Owen Hart and Farouk. I actually pretty short match, only 7 minutes, 16 seconds. The whole match was all about Steve Austin, basically. He was on commentary going between the different, language announce team. He starts off with, the King, Vince, and Jim, then goes to the Spanish announce team and the French announce team. And So the whole match is kind of just circled around Steve. So it kind of took away from the actual wrestling part of it. The finish comes, Steve Austin hits Farouk with the belt, and Owen Hart's your champion. So I think it's a cool spot. I mean, it furthers the storyline, the confusion between Owen Hart and Steve Austin. Again, we said this right after the SummerSlam botch. Owens wearing the shirt, "I just broke your neck," stuff like that. So it kind of furthers the storyline there. So I get the point of it. But as far as wrestling goes, yeah, I mean, you don't really remember the wrestling because you're distracted by what's going on with Austin.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before too, that this is one of the things that Owen Hart's death never brought closure to. The incident where, Steve essentially just wanted Owen to call him, talk to him, and Owen was almost afraid to, because Owen was so prideful in his work that he felt so bad that happened, that instead of contacting Steve, he'd go through JR. "Hey, how's Steve doing?" Stuff like this. And even JR, again, for some reason we're going to JR's book a lot today, but he would even bring up that, Steve would like to hear from you. Like you could still, for whatever reason, Owen just, whether it was pride or stubbornness or that he felt that, but I don't know, but it's unfortunate that Owen passed away, sometime after this without the closure that, Steve and Owen probably desperately needed. And it's too bad. And yeah, it takes away from what could have been a really good match in Farouk and Owen Hart. But like Tim said, it also furthers the storyline of, well, if Stone Cold has to give up the title, obviously he wants Owen to have it because he wants to beat him to get his title back. So it was somewhat predictable. And yeah, it's weird that they definitely seem to care way more about Steve Austin outside the ring than Owen and Farouk inside the ring.
Yeah, and I just don't understand. Like they were clearly setting this tournament up for, Owen to win the title to go to Stone Cold. But I mean, if you look down some of the names they had in the tournament, Brian Pillman passed away. Dude Love, Goldust, Farouk, Ken Shamrock, who was obviously injured in that match, supposedly. Ahmed Johnson and Rocky Maivia. And you had Ahmed Johnson go over Rocky Maivia, which is hilarious. But so it's like this person was always going to be second fiddle. So like you both, said, he was meant to set Stone Cold up, meant to set that storyline up, but Stone Cold was a riot on commentary. So if you watch the match, it's hilarious. Like when he goes over the Spanish announce, he was like, "I know a little bit of Spanish. I know you're trying to say something insulting to me." And he's like yelling at them. He's like, Hugo Chavez like, "No, my friend, no."
Next up, we have an 8-man tag match. You have the Disciples of Apocalypse and Los Proiguas. 9 minutes. It's an okay match. I honestly don't remember a whole lot about it, and I just watched this a couple hours ago. So it really didn't do anything special to me. Luckily the 2 matches after that are really, really good. But for this one, yeah, just kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, at least there was a little bit of lead up as to why they were having the match. Like that's the one thing I will crap on for like the LOD Nation of Domination. I mean, there was some lead up, but like with Shamrock being out, it kind of made the match feel clunky and whatever. So at least there was a little bit of lead up with this match with the groups. And this is one thing that we've said in different episodes in the past too, is that it seemed like everybody had a 4-person group for like this. Like, Bret had the Hart Foundation, you had the Disciple, the DOA, you had the Bariquas, you had the Nation, and the Nation spinoff was the Disciples of Apocalypse and Savio Vega and the Bariquas. So like, it just seemed like everybody had like 3 people that were like buddies of theirs that they wanted to have on TV. And like Tim said, it wasn't anything special, but there's a lot of good talent in this match. I will give that. I mean, probably overlooked too. I mean, the Harris brothers, and you have Savio Vega, of course, Crush. So I feel like for what it was definitely probably the 3rd worst match on the show. Obviously, you have the ones we talked about earlier. But if from the Owen Hart Farouk match down, this would have been a pretty solid card. Like even this one wasn't like that bad. It wasn't as bad as the first 2 matches, I guess, or the first 2, or the second, third. Yeah, the first one wasn't bad, but So it wasn't like that level bad, but it definitely was the worst out of those last 4 matches.
Yeah, it just I don't know. It just felt like it was a cluster. Again, I use the word a lot because once you get to multi-man matches, I almost feel like Tim always says, it gets confusing on who's legal, who's not legal, the different spots they're doing. And I feel like we've covered a couple of these episodes where it's been Los Barricos versus DOA. So I almost feel like it's one of the worst feuds that they've had. And like you said, there's a lot of talented people in the ring. They had no chemistry. And Savio Vega was a great wrestler. He was just one of those what could have been. You know, he was kind of like another Ahmed Johnson, like I joked about earlier. Like, had all the talent in the world, just never got there.
Mongo, were you inferring that the Barricos may not be legal?
No, don't put those words in my mouth.
That's why I was laughing in my head. So I just wanted to make sure that's where you weren't going.
Nope, I didn't say those words.
Hey, I just wanted to clear that up. I didn't want someone to get that you said legal. In
the terms of tag team wrestling.
Thank you.
Which, by the way, did you guys realize? Because apparently this was always been a thing. I never knew it was a rule. But Jimmy Smith just said on Raw, and I caught it on YouTube, that apparently as a tag team in tag team wrestling, you're only allowed to break up the pinfall attempt one time. So, which I never knew was a rule. That apparently
I thought you weren't supposed to do it at all.
Yeah, I thought
you're allowed to do it once apparently, which I thought the same as you, Tim. I was like, I always wondered why sometimes they never break up the pin or submission. Like, I always thought because they couldn't, and apparently at least WWE's adopted from NWA, they can only do it one time. I'm like, what a stupid fucking rule, because they don't even ever follow it.
Well, I would say this. I wish WWE video games follow that rule, because every time you're in a tag team match, you can't win the friggin' thing because the other team comes in and makes the save all the friggin' time.
You have to knock the other person off.
You have to knock them off.
yeah.
But, yeah. No, I think anything just... They could have even had like Los Barricos feud with the Nation and had LOD in the tag team match. That would have been better booking because, like Roland said, Savio Vega was basically kicked out of the Nation of Domination too.
Well, yeah, I mean, so wasn't Crush. I mean,
yeah,
you got to remember the incarnation of the Nation at this point is the second one. Like this is
right.
The first incarnation essentially was Crush and Savio and Farouk, and then that disbanded, and Farouk. I mean, D'Lo was there for most of it, but like then he kind of went a different direction, and we all know what happens after that. But yeah, a lot of people I think overlook the fact that Crush and Savio were in the original Nation of Domination.
Something so they could have done so much with it, and I think that's what just. And it's not a bad show like we talked about earlier. It's just. Again, it's how they do the card. I know hindsight's 2020. I know it's easy to go back in time and say, "Oh, the card could have been better." But I mean, how many modern examples you see? Like, why is this match right now?
Well, and like I said, though, from the Owen Hart Farouk match, this show is actually relatively good. Like I will say, there's almost a logic on every show we watch. Of every 3 matches, one of them's going to suck. 2 of them will be pretty good, and one of them's almost always going to suck. So in this instance, if you take the last 4 matches. Realistically, you had 1 out of 4. So, like you said, it's weird that they put the minis and then the headbangers match behind that. Like that was just 2 matches of like, meh. But like I said, from the Owen Hart match down, this card actually picked up, and even though this was a bit of a cluster, it still at least had some backstory. It wasn't just like 4 guys that are like heels and 4 guys that are faces thrown together because like they didn't know what to do. At least there was some backstory to it. Yes, it was an 8-man match, so it was clustery. And even Jim Ross brought up somewhat recently on either Dynamite or Rampage, when you have a multi-person match, why the hell isn't there more than 1 referee?
Right.
That if it were me and I had my own company, AEW has done a lot of really good things, but when you have more than 4 people, there needs to be an extra referee.
Even on the outside, like the NFL kind of like have just have them outside walking around.
Because you're not going to buy that a referee can keep an eye on 6 people. They have a hard enough time doing 2 people and then 4. Once you get up past 4, how do you expect 1 referee to focus on 8 people?
And there's Aubrey, who's the head ref currently in EW. Speaking of that, has a podcast out, the AEW Restricted, and she actually talks a lot about, because they interviewed her, about how she, got her start in the business as Girl Hebner, and how she specialized in some of these multi-man matches. But she talks about, she goes, they're fucking hard. She's like, I don't care what you think about wrestling. She's like, but trying to either act like you know what's going on or actually know what's going on when you have four people slamming each other at the same time and you're trying not to get run over and you're trying to make sure you're seeing the right spot. So I agree. I don't know why they've never done a second move. I've always thought that, like, have like the NFL, have like a, like they do with the Rumble, have someone standing outside watching, make sure someone's tagging in, like, hey, there's no tag there. Or even like Unforgiven, have fucking old Blue Pants himself come out and be like, no, this didn't happen.
Well, and she also mentioned on Jericho's podcast once that she's a big proponent of coming up with an actual rule book and following those rules, because at a certain point, you need to have rules. You need to know what the rules are, because if you don't, then it's just total anarchy. So, like, having the time limit draws and having the tag ropes, certain nuances of wrestling make matches so much better. So in instances like this is a prime example of one extra set of eyes would have been huge, because this match didn't have a ton of gaga, but like some of the matches that do, you can actually have a referee interject and it makes it more believable, because like how is one person going to focus on 8? You just can't. So like Mongo said, have the person outside the ring, have them in a dedicated corner, whatever. And all their job is to do is watch. Not watch the people that are in the ring, but just watch. Just stand there and watch. Whether it's, on the steps, like in the corner, maybe stand there and just watch. Or like on the down below the apron or whatever. There's certain ways to do it where it won't be as bad.
No, I agree, because the difference between entertainment and wrestling to me is, I like wrestling to, at least feel like a sport. And yes, I know it's staged, predetermined, moves protected, yada, yada. If you're listening to this and you're telling us that, you're obviously listening to the wrong show. But when I watch wrestling, I want it to mean something. That's why I like, the ranking system at AEW. That's why I like, the no automatic rematches, and then WWE, will sit there and insult your intelligence by, for no reason, having a rematch. Or Impact has these weird, like, rules where they basically don't follow them, and you're like, oh, this person's suddenly a number one contender. That makes no sense. But then they have a really cool rule with the X Division title where you can cash it in for a title shot. Like, you can literally give up your title for a title, and I think that's cool. So it makes sense, like Ron said, when they have a rule book, when they have some sort of structure, you're going to be more entertained because you're more invested to it. And like we always said, the more invested you are into it, the more enjoyable it is. Versus, like, on Extreme Rules last weekend where there was nothing enjoyable about it.
Well, speaking of weird rules, that kind of leads us into our next match. It's a flag match between Bret Hart and the British Bulldog against the Patriot and Vader. It's a flag match, so you have to, in theory, the rules should be you have to climb the pole and retrieve your country's flag. But they made a big deal, new stipulation. You can win by pinfall or submission now, which didn't make any sense. Why are you having a flag match?
That's sort of the whole gimmick of it.
Yeah, and what's even worse is you actually have the win by pinfall. So, this match, there was a lot of brawling outside the ring before the match even began. I actually think the match might have been a little too long for what it was. It's 23 minutes, 13 seconds. I thought it was a solid match, though. I mean, I thought it was a good tag team match. I thought it might have been a little bit of a clash of styles there, especially with Vader and, Bret. But they managed well. They blended well together. So I really enjoyed this one. It might have been a little too long for my liking for this type of a match. But I thought it was a really good match and a good lead up to the main event. It's hard to believe that Bret's the only one that's still alive out of this match. We just lost the Patriot not too long ago. So that was one take. There's a lot of people that are no longer with us that are on this card, which is always kind of tough to think about when you go back and watch stuff like this. So, but overall, I was pretty happy with this one.
Yeah, it makes you wonder and appreciate the ones that are still alive, that are still with us, because at one point, I mean, there's some of these shows we watch that aren't that far. Like 1997 is not that long ago. It's really not in the grand scheme of things. And like half of these guys are dead. Like it's crazy. And they're not in their 70s and 80s dying. Like they're dying young. Like they're, some of these guys died way too young. And it puts it into perspective a little bit. Like, like Tim said, Del Wilkes just passed away within the past year. And, Bret Hart isn't exactly a figure for great health either. I mean, he's had the concussion issues from Goldberg, from that, the head injury. And then, he had a stroke and stuff. He's in somewhat rough shape. He's doing okay, but it just goes to show you that some of these people back in the day, they abuse their bodies in more ways than one, and it's unfortunate. A lot of times there is, substance involved, a certain substance, whether it was steroids or extracurricular activity, drug related stuff, but it's just unfortunate. But yeah, like Tim said, it was a weird clustery kind of, you change the rule. A flag, that's like playing, playing a game and saying, okay, like whatever the game is, and just changing the rules enough so it's not that game. Like it doesn't make why have a flag match when it's like having a ladder match and then being like, well, you don't have to once you get the belt, you got to pin the guy too. It's like, no, like that's not what you do. You just take the flag or the belt or whatever it is. So that was definitely interesting. And it's weird. This is when Vader was kind of like a face almost, like they were trying. Vader's not a. I don't care what incarnation you have of Vader. In no world should he be a face. Just like in no world should Yokozuna ever be a face. These guys should be big menacing heels, and that's that. So it was a weird, just a weird pairing, I think, and it was interesting to think too that Bret Hart is teaming with Davey Boy, who's his real life brother-in-law, but he's also from England. So
yeah,
the Canadian flag.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird, but yeah. But like Tim said, it wasn't a terrible match. It definitely was a little bit harder hitting style match than I thought it would be. Bret hung in there well. I think that's one thing you can take away from this too, is that Bret was, when he says he was excellent in execution, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. He was good. He's no Shawn Michaels, but he was good. And I know that's usually the joke of Bret or Shawn. It's Shawn for me, sorry. But it just gives you an appreciation for Bret because he could have a match with anybody.
And I agree. The problem with Bret, and this is not a shot, it's just he was himself. He didn't really have a gimmick. And the problem is his lack of gimmick. People didn't think he had charisma. He had charisma. He was himself. And a couple things I had noted in this. One, it was really weird to hear the Patriots music again because I forgot for a while that it was Kurt Angle's music.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it was the Patriots first, but so in my head I'm like, you suck. I'm like, wait, this is the Patriots. Why am I chanting this out loud right now? And to echo Ron's point earlier, the Patriot was only 59 years old when he died. Vader was 63. Bret's currently 64, and the British Bulldog was only in his late 40s. And like you did say about the substance abuse, Darkseid is going to be covering the steroid trials, and I can't wait to see all the WWE defenders who, once they realize how shady Papa Vince was with steroids in the 90s, and he had the no simpy neck brace on, oh, I hurt my neck, so I got to look good in trial. But you have British Bulldog who unfortunately loved his cocaine, and if you read Bret Hart's book, there's a lot of times, and I don't know if this match was more of just they wanted to protect British Bulldog because this was when he was going through his struggles. Because it almost felt like the British Bulldog should have fought the Patriot and Bret Hart should have fought Vader. Because Bret Hart should champion. Why is he fighting in a meaningless flag match?
Well, and you know the story of the match, the 92 match in SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium, that when Bret got there, Davey actually was all kinds of fucked up. And Bret essentially carried that match and that was in 92. So yeah. This is a 5-year gap, and it just goes to show you that, there's a lot of demons in this business, especially back then where you'd get clean for a little bit and then fall back. It was such a hard business. now the wrestlers nowadays have guaranteed contracts that they didn't have back then, and they're working a lot less, especially with the pandemic era. They're working weekends, and that's it, really. They're not working during the week anymore.
And I'm not trying to slate, Davey Boy, because I know we talked about this on our 1 year anniversary, episode 52, cheap plug, because this is one of the matches that you selected, the SummerSlam match, a British Bulldog and Bret. And I remember talking about that, and you talking about that from the book, and it just kind of made me think of another what could have been, because he was so talented, and like you said, this was a match full of potatoes. Like, they were beating the shit out of each other, because Vader doesn't work soft.
No,
the Patriots like, all right, I'm keeping up with you guys. British Bulldog's like, let's go. Bret Hart's like, well, I'm just gonna do my thing, so just don't kill me. So it worked out great, and like Tim said, it was capture the flag with a pinfall stipulation, so that didn't really make sense.
That's the best way to describe it too. Like,
yeah.
Capture the flag, and then once you capture it, you still have to pin the guy.
I can just picture Vince Russo like, bro, you know how we normally do a flag match where you got to grab the flag and like celebrate? No, bro, you're gonna have to grab the flag, and then you're gonna have to pin him. And here's the best part: we're gonna have a Canada flag, because they're Britain, right? That's where Davey's from, right? Britain. That's where they're from. So I just kind of felt like it was Vince Russo special in this one, but
I feel like somebody out back, like when they were talking about this, is like, it could have been Vince Russo, it could have been somebody else, but they're like, what if? Bear with me. What if the person that takes the flag down of this pole has to then put it up that one to win the match? And they're like, no, what if we do pinball instead? Like, I feel like it was like a happy medium, because like it was almost like they couldn't just make it a regular match. Like, it's almost like you took a dog collar match, and then like they made a dog collar match, and then after you pinned them, you then had to escape the collar to win. Like, it just didn't make any sense. It was just weird. I don't get it.
When you have a gimmick and you don't even use the gimmick, and it's just a straight pinfall match, at that point you just want to call the match something cool for a poster. And that's what WWE is so guilty of. And AEW's been guilty of that too, when they'll have like the arcade brawl or whatever. It's just a street fight, like, but it's an old trope in wrestling that I can't stand. It's like, if you're gonna do a gimmick match, and use a fucking gimmick, which I'm gonna let Tim segue into the next match, because at least this gimmick, they used it.
Yes. So our main event is the first ever Hell in a Cell match. It's going to determine the number one contender to face Bret Hart for the title at Survivor Series. You have Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. They go a half hour here. This is one of the most famous matches in wrestling. It's one of the ones that you have to see. It's a classic match. This is pre Mick Foley, so Shawn Michaels took a pretty brutal bump in the match, but it doesn't compare to what Mick did. Mick actually said that he had to top that match. It's a great match and a great way to make the end the show. And then the significance about it too is, well, it's significant in multiple facets, because it sets up the Montreal Screwdrive. Shawn Michaels goes over, so that sets up that, and it sets up the debut of Kane. Kane comes out. Undertaker's going for the win. Lights go dark. Kane's music hits, comes out with Paul Bearer, hits a tombstone, and Shawn Michaels gets the 1, 2, 3. So it's a really significant match in history for multiple reasons. You can't really describe it. It's a really for a Hell in a Cell match, for being the first one. They really did a good job with this. That's gotta be Kane.
As
iconic,
as Vince McMahon says it about 400 times, and it's almost as bad as when Hogan came out for the NWO, and Bobby the Brain Heenan spoils it and goes, "Yeah, but whose side is he on?" It's like, oh, you fuckhead, you just spoiled it. Like, why? Like, Vince, obviously that's Kane, but you should be playing off like, who the hell is this guy? Like, you shouldn't be like, that's got to be Kane, or like, what side is Hogan on? Like, the announcers are so important to these matches. You can't jump the gun like that. That's one takeaway, like the iconic, like, that's gotta be Kane. Well, yeah, no shit, but like, why are you not playing up like you don't know who this guy is? Like, it was weird. And then like, once he gets in the ring or whatever, then you say, when the Undertaker's like, then you go, that's gotta be Kane. You don't say it when he's 3 feet out the entrance ramp. And he literally just barely turned the lights back on. They're like, that's Kane. What are you doing? But like Tim said, this is easily one of the most successful first ever matches that I think any company has ever had. I mean, there's a lot of, firsts, but it's nowadays they do it too much. The Hell in a Cell, having a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view is stupid because you're going to have 1 or 2 matches, maybe 3 every year. This is one of those things where you should have this on special occasions when it comes down to it. When you have a feud, a Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, or something that means something that needs to be in a Hell in a Cell. There shouldn't just be like, well, we're gonna have the WWE Championship. It's gonna be Kofi Kingston, Randy Orton in Hell in a Cell. It's like, why? Like, I don't.
And it shouldn't be red either. I just want to get that out of there. But
yeah, it's just I will give them credit. They've to their own credit that taking the Money in the Bank idea and making that an annual pay-per-view. Now that makes sense because then that gives you a number 1 contender at any time for that year. That makes sense. But like making a random pay-per-view Hell in the Cell, it's almost like having Lockdown on TNA. Like, why do you need to have a pay-per-view that has all the matches in a cage? Like it doesn't make sense. Like the cage is supposed to be a brutal end of a feud or a way to keep people out or something. So, I will give WWE credit that when they first started doing these, they had a big meaning and the matches meant something way more than they do today. And the cage wasn't red. So good point, Tim.
No, I agree. There was nothing more special, as a kid growing up watching wrestling, and you'd hear, well, it's going to be in the Hell in the Cell. And you were like, oh shit, it's going down. Like someone's bleeding, someone's, not one team. And JR did such a good job always selling these. Like, these matches are career changers. These are career enders. You're never the same after this match. So you understood the seriousness. And when you first saw that structure, even in the flag match, you saw it hanging above the ring and just how ominous it was. And this is one of the pay-per-views I'll always remember, because not only for the debut of Kane, but just how much Shawn Michaels, like, this is when I really became like Shawn Michaels, like almost number 1 fan, because he just got the fuck beat out of him in this match. And he was a bump machine. Like Tim said, he's hanging off the cage and Undertaker's stomping his hands and he goes to the table and he's, getting flipped around on the top. And I kept thinking, shit, he's going to go through. I know he's not, because I've seen this match so many times, but you think of the Mankind match where he does go through, because that was what's happened. And I think the reason why this match maybe is a little more undershadowed, because like Tim said, Mankind had to one up, Shawn Michaels' spot, and unfortunately killed himself essentially doing it. But one of the best ones I like that this kind of, I feel like, took a lot of cues from is, do you guys remember when Undertaker and Triple H at Mania 28, I think it was, when they had Triple H wanted to try to beat the streak and they had it in the Hell in the Cell with Shawn Michaels as referee. So I thought that was kind of a cool full circle, because this match will always stick out. That, Kane ripping the door off, like you said, the iconic line of him spoiling the surprise. Paul Bearer, not Paul Heyman. Paul Bearer coming out and having that demonic smile, looking at Taker like, I got your brother, bitch. Like, and just the great feud they set up. And like you said, setting up Survivor Series 97. And Shawn bled like a stuck pig in this match too.
Yeah.
Well, so, and you got to remember too that Triple H and Undertaker have had the most Hell in a Cell matches, so
right.
That also brought that full circle from the first one, where the Undertaker was in the first 2, and then it was almost like the baton got passed to Triple H for the longest time. In the mid 2000s, Triple H was always having Hell in a Cell matches with whoever.
Right.
So like it, like you said, it started back in '97, and it tied everything together so smoothly. Then to have Shawn in that match, yeah, no, I totally agree. That's a good point.
So I just want to raise this point too. I know earlier, Roland mentioned about the tag team match and why, there should be more than one referee. Well, I think before every match, we should have Sergeant Slaughter check the ring with a flashlight to make sure there's nobody under there.
That was great.
And then he tells the cage to lower down, and it doesn't. And then it's like,
yeah.
Yeah. Worst commissioner WWF ever had. Like, I love.
Oh, come on!
Worst commissioner.
No.
Him and Mick Foley, probably the worst commissioners WWF ever had.
Hey,
there goes my $10 for Mick Foley. I ain't getting back now.
Oh no, don't worry. I'm trying to find up the courage because I'm going to meet him next Monday. I'm going to have the courage to like, so you got Tim's $10 or what?
You really need to get Tim's $10 back. That's your goal, and we We need to hear what comes of that.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I'm sure it'll be a story because they have a restraining order, which is an autograph Mick Foley, or we'll get him $10. It's like that. What's that movie? Better Off Dead, where he's like $2.
Mongo's gonna come back with $10 of his own money and be like, "I got this from Mick Foley."
Yeah. So that's a rundown of Bad Blood 97. Overall, I'm probably going to give this a 6.5 just because I was entertained by a lot of the matches, and the main event was really, really good. And this is a pretty significant show that's not talked about a whole lot. So I'll give it a 6.5. I think it is worth, like Roland to me, the last 4 matches. Definitely the last 2. If you have a good, 45 minutes to kill, the last 2 matches are really worth watching. So 6.5 for me.
Yeah, I'd say it's somewhere in that same range, around 6.5. And again, like Tim said, taking into the importance of this show of filling the gap between SummerSlam and Survivor Series, and then also sprinkling in the fact that Brian Pillman died that morning. Kudos to them for filling the gaps, putting together a show that, unlike when Owen Hart died, that show probably should have stopped. This show is similar to like when Eddie Guerrero passed away. Like, you want the show to go on in their memory, essentially. And, they didn't die at the show, obviously. So it's a little bit different, but, kudos to them for getting through it. And yeah, somewhere between 6.5 is about where I would put this too.
No, that's fair. I think I'd say with a solid 6 too, just because, if you take out the Max Mini match and the Godwin match, it elevated, but there was just some stuff that brought it down. But overall, wrestling wise, had some good wrestling. Storyline wise, like you said, it fed into Survivor Series. This is when their pay-per-views meant something. Yeah, we complain about monthly pay-per-views, but at least they continued storylines, and when they set up the pay-per-views, you wanted to watch Survivor Series. And obviously, going back in time now, holy shit, how iconic Survivor Series 97 was for good and bad reasons. This was everything. And this was even the start of Triple H kind of rising up, because Shawn Michaels would gift him that European title that my buddy Nick says is the greatest looking title ever, which I disagree with, but probably because Shawn Michaels had it at this time. So let me ask you guys, what are your thoughts on the look of the European title? Because I never really thought it was a good look.
I didn't mind it.
I was going to say, I don't hate it.
My favorite belt, though, I always liked, and I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for this, was the oval-shaped Intercontinental belt.
Yeah, that was a good looking belt, though.
Yeah.
I like the white strip.
Winged Eagle for me.
Yeah.
To me, I'll probably get heat too. It's the when they took the Winged Eagle and they made it more circular and put the blue strap. That was more like where Mick Foley won it. Basically, that circular style was when I liked it. But
with the globe in it.
Yeah.
Almost like the Attitude Era belt, really. That was.
Yeah.
I mean, not as crappy as some of the belts they have today. Like, God, that U.S. title and Intercontinental are atrocious.
Yeah.
Well, like, I get wanting the titles to be colorful and look different, but like when you take a U.S. title and shape it just like the Universal and the WWE title, and then just add like the flag to it, it's the same fucking belt. It's not. At least the Intercontinental Championship, even though it is kind of ugly, at least it looks different.
Yeah, we got to go back to the old. I like what AEW is doing with the TNT titles, where they'll get like a different variation. We need to go back to that with the IC titles, like when the white strap and the yellow, like when the yellow strap that Baltimore had. That was probably one of the most underrated belts. That yellow, it was bright freaking yellow.
Shawn Michaels had the white one for a while. Yeah,
I think didn't Cody Rhodes bring it back, the white one?
I think
for a
so.
while?
Yeah. When he was dashing Cody Rhodes back before AEW and bad neck tattoos.
Yeah. And now reality shows.
Yeah.
So let's kind of tease this in the beginning about our 100th episode. Before we get to that, though, I'm gonna make you wait a little bit longer. Next week we're gonna talk about NXT Respect 2015. Lots of names that on the card: Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Sasha Banks, etc. So really looking forward to it. Our NXT shows are very popular with you guys, so we're looking to dive into that. We haven't done a whole lot of them, so anytime we can do an NXT show, definitely looking forward to covering that for you guys next week.
This is NXT 1.0.
Yes.
Not 2.0.
I mean, even their 2.0 is not 2.0, really like 4.0 if you did math. They did Scott Steiner math, just not his nephew's legacy.
Right.
All right, guys. So we have a very special announcement to make. Our 100th episode is coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to do a special live episode on October 29th. It is a Friday night. And then we're going to post, either the full version or highlights, depending on how it goes, to be honest with you, on Saturday at our normal time. But we're doing a live show thanks to our friends at Clemento's Pizzeria and Brew. They have graciously agreed to host us and sponsor this podcast. So we want to say our thanks to Steve, the owner there, for hosting us. There's going to be lots of specials. What we're going to plan on doing is we're going to do a live podcast. Plan is we're going to do a watch along of Rampage that night, since it's on the same night. So we're going to do that. We're in the works, do some trivia. We may have some giveaways, stuff like that. We may have some guests on. I just bought a whole bunch of fancy equipment for this, so hopefully it all works. So we got a lot of stuff going on. You're going to be hearing a lot more about Clemento's in the next coming weeks in the podcast. But for right now, we have some specials going on October 29th. Really great deals. You have a small cheese for $6.99 or a large cheese for $9.99. And their pizza's delicious. We've all had it. It's really, really good. Steve knows how to cook a pizza. So we're going to definitely, be partaking in some of these specials, I think. Beer lovers, you have an $8.99 domestic beer pitcher. Also, an $11.99 16-ounce draft beer and a steak and cheese sub. So steak and cheese sub is normally $11.99 wherever you go. So that's a cool special right there. So those are the specials. Like I said, more to come. If you want more information about Clemento's, they're located right in Rochester. And you can visit them at clementospizzaandbrew.com. So once again, thanks to Steve and the crew over there for hosting us. So really looking forward to a 100th episode. Can't believe it's gotten to that point. I don't know if Roland and I ever, when we started this, ever imagined we'd get this far. But it has, and we're really thankful and looking forward to Pizza and Wrestling on the 29th.
Yeah, I don't think we envisioned it ever getting to this point. We figured, I know that Tim and I had conversations of like, hey, if we have like 5 people listen, like we'll be happy. Or like if 2 people, if somebody comments, we'll be happy. And, like Mongo posted the thing on our page, 20 countries. That's crazy. It's insane to think about on the grand scheme of things in only essentially 2 years. I mean, we're coming up on the 2-year here shortly in a couple of months. It's crazy to think of. And, again, thank you to everybody. Also, I want to add too that, we will have hopefully by next week, we'll have an actual commercial that we can run. But you also need to make sure that you mention that commercial at Clemento's to get the special, according to what Steve said. So thank you again to Steve Goslin. And anybody that's tried Clemento's in the past and had a negative experience, Steve now owns it, and he has only owned it for the past month or so, month, officially. So if anybody's had any negative experiences prior to that, I beg you, I implore you to give them another shot. Steve will make it right. And I can tell you from fact that I've been to the one that he used to own in Manchester that he sold and now has the one in Rochester. He makes a damn good pizza. He makes good food. He takes care of people. He treats you like they're family, friends. He'll shoot the shit with you. He is a very personable person. Mongo and I both went to school with him, so we've known him for years. It's almost the perfect coming together of us getting essentially a working sponsor who's willing to host us. We're going to make sure that we promote them on our social, on the podcast. They'll promote us. So it's the best of both worlds here. And we want to make this 100th episode really mean something to be special. So we want any fans that are local to the Rochester area. I know we have friends that listen to this. It's a Friday night. So again, it's not like you have to go to work. Most of us don't have to go to work the next day. It should be epic. Mongo will be just back from the cruise of Jericho, man. That should be fun for, if anybody wants to hear stories from that. I'm sure he'll be telling stories from that. Not everything, because we have to have an episode or a vlog or whatever he decides to do with it. But just come out and enjoy yourself. And like we said, we're going to probably have some trivia. We might even have one of the ideas I thought about, and I haven't really run it by you guys, but we might even have, depending on the matches, if you have certain tickets, you can pick the winner of the match. We'll have two jars. You can put your tickets in, and then whoever gets that match right, we draw a winner out of that. Like to have somebody win too, which would be kind of cool. So, endless possibilities. And if this goes well, maybe it's something we can do, once every couple of months or whatever. Maybe we can do it for a pay-per-view at some point. Like that would be cool too. Who knows? The possibilities are endless. So anybody that listens to us, come support us, come support Clementos, and make Steve beg us to come back and do another event.
No, I agree. And the great thing for, we do have listeners that aren't in the New Hampshire area. We're going to be live streaming on Facebook. So there'll be an event going up. I encourage you to, if you want to go to it, because I can send you a link. You'll be able to join in on the show with us or comment. And that's going to be part of, we're going to depend on you for some fan interaction, because we have some ideas on how we want to do it, but we need the fans' input. And so whether you're live in the show and you want to shoot the shit with us, ask us a question, Steve, you're going to meet Steve. He's going to come on the show and talk a little bit. Whether you guys have ideas or, things like that, it's going to be fan interaction. I think it's going to be fun, so keep an eye on our socials at WWPAP podcast. Just because we're going to have all the latest updates there. Make sure you're following Clementos on there too, because they're probably going to have some information. Come out, have pizza with us, have beer with us. If you've only listened to a couple episodes, come out, because maybe we'll reminisce about some past episodes. You can go through the archives, and right now every Friday we're posting some clips from our Archive Friday, like with the Jonathan Life interview, or even today's most recent episode for ECW Heatwave. So there's 100 episodes of content plus bonus. So there's actually more that is out there for you to listen to, and we couldn't do this without you. We thank you. Keep telling your friends about us. Please, keep liking and sharing and commenting, interacting, because it's helping us up in the algorithms. I mean, this has been one of our most successful weeks in a very long time, so we thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to having some pizza, beer, talking with my friends on the podcast and meeting some new friends on the podcast.
Yeah, I also, Tim, I don't think you and I even thought that we'd have a third person, let alone be lucky enough to have a third person that helps out as much as he does. I mean, this is, we might crap on him and give him shit a lot just because it's easy to do, but and
he mixes up Kamala and the Godfather.
But we are very fortunate to have you, and I'm glad that it's come together the way that it has. And like you said, this is nothing that I envisioned going back, to the first 5, 10, 15 episodes, going back to the first episode with a shitty mic, and then, having the, switching the mic up, getting that taken care of, and then, having the microphone fall over, which is in the blooper reel from the beginning of the show. And just, it's crazy to think of and sit back and think. So again, I'm very fortunate. I know Tim, I'm not going to speak for Tim, but I know Tim's, feels the same way in from what we've discussed before, but we couldn't have picked a better person to be the third person with us, Mongo. So again, it's kind of turned into like a Mongo appreciation thing. Honestly, you do a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we just don't have time to do. Like we have busy lives, and we definitely would not have the growth we've had on social if it weren't for you doing that. So thank you for all that you do. And like I said, you may take shit from us more than you probably deserve sometimes, but you give it back just as well. And if we weren't friends and it wasn't clicking, people would be able to tell, and clearly tell that like this is just three guys who enjoy each other's company and enjoy each other, talking about wrestling. And with any luck, we've discussed possibly having a trial run of our equipment maybe next weekend, of having our first episode actually all together, which would be crazy. Hopefully that happens, and that would be pretty cool. Plus, we need to make sure the equipment works, because if it doesn't, we don't want to find out on the live day, because that would suck.
that wouldn't be too good. So hopefully the stuff that I got through Amazon works. So it looks good anyways. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, no, just my sentiments is exactly, Mongo, thank you for agreeing to do the show. You've definitely helped us grow a lot more than we were in the past. And it's hard to think about that. Yeah, we've been doing this for almost 2 years. I was full disclosure, I was looking for something to do in audio, because I got laid off from my job at a radio station, and I went into podcasting. Roland suggested the idea of doing a podcast. I tried one on my own, didn't really go over too well, but Roland agreed to do one with me, and here we are now with the three of us. And we do this for fun, and we do it for you guys. We're not making any money off this. We're actually losing money. All three of us put some sort of money into this, and but we do it for you guys. We do it because we enjoy it. We enjoy watching these shows. We enjoy covering it. We enjoy giving you our takes, and we love hearing from you too. So it's it's kind of got all sentimental here the last couple minutes, but
well, I mean, if we're gonna spitball about the 100th episode, it needed to be something that it just like WWE. You can't have scripted promos, man. You have to say what you're thinking, and like I said, I appreciate everybody that listens. Somebody like my mom who could care less about the wrestling aspect of it, that just listens to hear us, have a good time. Somebody like that, and then you have somebody that's a diehard fan that will comment on Facebook or on Twitter or wherever and go at us with certain memes and interact. Like, I know there's only a select few right now. Hopefully that grows. And I mean, I'm seeing different names every time there's a pop-up on Facebook for someone liking that isn't any of our friends. So like, clearly we're getting out there and it's working. And again, thank you to everybody that's even if you only listened to one episode and didn't like it, thanks for listening and trying. We won't hear this because you're not going to listen to it, but at least you did. And hopefully you liked it. And like I said, this episode 100 could be the worst thing we ever do and we'll never do it again, or it could be the best thing we do and we do it often. So it depends on your guys' participation in it, and it depends on it's one of those things where if it's not working, we're not going to force it. So it literally is us going out there, kind of going out of our comfort zone and trying to do something a little bit different, a little bit interactive for the fans that do interact with us. And like I said, it could be an epic fail and we never do it again, or it could be something that we enjoy and we try it again, down the road.
No, absolutely. I agree. And, thank you guys for the kind words. I appreciate it. I love being on the show. When you first asked me to come on, I was like, yeah, because I love, shooting the shit with wrestling. If I didn't have Emily in my life, no one would listen to me talk about wrestling, because literally, I talk about wrestling at work and there's like 2 or 3 people who, hey, Matt, thanks for not firing me all those years ago. But, there's only a few people at work who actually talk wrestling. So it's like, I didn't have a lot. So it was a nice outlet. So, the podcast wouldn't exist without the 2 podfathers, starting in the corner of Tim's house, all the different episodes. I was a loyal listener from day one. So it's kind of funny. It's like, I was a listener from day one. Now I'm on the show. So I appreciate it. I'm having fun. And like Tim said, we wouldn't do this if we didn't like it. We wouldn't invest in ourselves and invest in the show if we didn't have fun doing it. And, we've all agreed that if it's not fun or it's just, we don't like it anymore, we're going to stop doing it. But I haven't had even anything close to those feelings. So I enjoy doing this, and I'm looking forward to celebrating 100 episodes. And, I'm sure we might go off the rails here and there, but I don't think any of our shows really go smoothly, but that's what's fun. They're real.
Well, and it's going to be as live can be too. So, if it's one of those things where a microphone goes over, we can't edit it out.
Nope.
We can on the rebroadcast, but not on the live one. Yeah. So,
and you actually get to see us, actually know what we look like.
We're not much to look
special.
at.
No, we're nothing special.
Spoiler alert, we look like the average wrestling fan, except I think we all smell better than the average wrestling fan. I will say that, that's one of the memes going around about why Roman wore the mask, that wrestling fans are smelly. That's why I said that. But we're not much to look at. So
I will say, future idea for Comic-Cons, and you heard it from us first, instead of handing out little gift bags, hand out little samples of deodorant when people walk into Comic-Cons, because that would be the most over table, because there is nothing worse than going into Boston in the summertime in their convention center and getting in line and just smelling that raw onion smell. You're just like, I'm done.
And the best part is too, you're like, oh, thank God it's not me.
Yep. Or it's Enzo's merch from Live 9 that smells like pure ass.
That's because he only has one bag.
Wrestling, and you can't wash that.
But something that does smell good, the food at Clemento. So go visit them and go eat their food, and join us on the 29th. And we'll be promoting it, the next couple of weeks up until then. So again, thanks to Clementos. Thanks to all of you for listening. I think that pretty much wraps us up for this episode. So again, don't sleep on the next coming weeks, though, because up until the 100th episode, we're still going to provide you a lot of great content, including next week when we do NXT Respect 2015. Everyone have a great week. Until next Saturday at 5, I'm Tim Kirk.
I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And this is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present.
get a beer.
And pizza.
I hope you're all having a nice day.